I'm Irish, I'm sort of shameless, so, you know. But the heartbreak of watching that was terrible. It's not that they don't care, it's that they don't know what to do. And they truly don't believe that they know best. So if you're a pastor, what can you do? Start talking to your church about how amazing parenthood is, and how amazing marriage is, and what it means to be a mom and a dad and a husband and a wife. And talk to your other pastors to do that too. Because before we can get them to fight the school, we have to get them to understand who they are. If you are a grandparent, share your marriage with your children. I had a friend, and when her one son went to college, she came home and said, "I finally believe in marriage." And she went, "Your father and I have been married forever. We thought you were the only ones." Mm-hmm. Wow. You know, man made government, but God made family. If we're going to fix it, we have to start by reaffirming how amazing family is. And we don't. We don't. So how can you help? Start with your own. Start at home. If you're a pastor, start in your church. Support those folks in your own church. Talk to other pastors. In Delaware, I work with a whole group of pastors. A lot of them inner city folks, to work with those people. In Philadelphia, I told you I work with the scholarship folks. So there's lots of things you can do, but it's easy to, oh, that generation doesn't care. That's not true. That generation just doesn't know what to do. And they really do feel like they're crushed. They just don't know what to do with it. And that's really sad. So support them. Be there for them. Reinforce them. Because that's a really critical thing to do. Yes, ma'am.
More of a comment than a question, really. But I have a 9th grade daughter, and she just came home to me the other day and told me that she has to do a data-based question essay on the Mughal Empire for her global history class. Now the documents, it's a document-based essay. She can't go on the internet and find her own research. She has to go to the school resource section and get the documents that are provided that are Common Core aligned to write her essay. So to me, that's taking away that free thought of, we're not teaching our kids what to think, we're teaching them how to think, right?
Well, that's what we should be doing. Instead,
or we're teaching them, I'm sorry, it's the opposite. We're teaching them what to think and not how to think.
Yes.
I mean, is that part of this ELA and this?
Yes.
This
it's moving toward, the Common Core says that they can only have 30% literature and by 12th grade, 30% literature and 70% non-fictional readings. But the readings are controlled, and so what you're telling me, I've heard in Texas and in Tennessee and in Washington and whatever. Yes, if I control what you read, and what they're telling them is we're going to provide, this is what, so for example in California, was an 8th grade class, and the children were told to debate whether or not the Holocaust existed, and the school provided them with information from people who said it did, and then from mostly Islamic writers who said that it didn't. It was a propaganda initiative. Half the children wound up saying that the Holocaust was pretend, that it didn't happen, because the school provided them as if they were equal resources. So if I control the information flow, then I control what you think. The same thing happens in the testing. So, for example, the GED test is Common Core aligned, and the Washington Times actually did an article about it, talking about the GED test, and one of the questions talked about American foreign aid to Afghanistan, and the levels of it were not acceptable, and that's what, it led to a lot of frustration, and that's why the poor Afghans flew their planes into the World Trade Center. They weren't Afghans.
That's funny that you
and
say
they were
that.
Poor.
It's funny that you say that because I've dealt with my school district since October. I found a disparity in number of pages between Judaism and Christianity and Islam. There's 5 pages on Judaism and Christianity and 15 pages on the rise of Islam. So I brought that concern to the school district. They told me that I could have the primary sources, that the book was not the primary source. That's absolutely not true. Now that I've had a meeting with district lawyers and one for myself, I found out that the book was the primary source. And the teacher's own mind, the school district tells me, was the primary source. And that's why they couldn't give me any primary sources.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Boston's Bound. Right here. Boston.
Unfortunately, the pushing of Islam is not limited to your school. We're finding those examples all over the country. In it's either Pennsylvania or Maryland, and now I don't remember which, but the father was a Marine, and the children were required to write the Islamic. In Islam, there's it would be the equivalent of the accepting Christ as my Lord and Savior prayer in Islam. And the children were required to write it, which is the conversion prayer of Islam. So it would be the same as going into a school and requiring all the children to write, I accept Christ as my Lord and Savior, which if you were Jewish, you would probably object to that. So, and you should, I mean, that's not the purpose of, but the children were required. So the father went in and went, I'm having they banned him from the school to where he wasn't even going to be allowed to attend his daughter's graduation. So he's suing. Thomas More Law Center is representing him. But so it's everywhere. In Texas, they put 14-year-old little girls in burqas for a day. The parents didn't know ahead of time. The little girls were traumatized. I don't know, a burqa. So the reason is so that the woman will have to turn her head so that the man will always know what she's looking at, because women are only half a man in Islam.
A quarter.
So it's a half.
In Cork, it's 25%.
So
I work in Islamic nations.
okay, so so the burqa is so that you can. But they put these little 14-year-old girls. They were traumatized, and the parents were less than pleased. And the teachers said, we were told we weren't allowed to tell you in advance because we knew you would object. So we weren't allowed to give you advance notice. So it's a huge problem that we have across the country, and so it's a real mindset that all of these books that are Common Core aligned are very Islamic, and if Christianity is presented at all, it's evil and nasty and bad and whatever. So that's a part of what is surfacing across the country. So you're not the only one.
Yeah, they brought in a guest presentation, two of them, I'm sorry, from the Islamic Cultural Center. And they have no plans on bringing in any other guest speakers because legally, what I was told by their lawyer, they don't have to.
Right. So, but that's part of the, take your kid out of the school. Because then they can't get poisoned. I will close with telling you a very interesting. I went to Oklahoma. It was a huge rally. I went back to Oklahoma, it was like 4 years later. And a man came up to me and he said, just want you to know I was at the rally you did however many years ago. And I said, okay. I said, yeah, I hated you. Okay, most people start with hello. Okay. Because I didn't like anything you told me. I didn't want to believe anything you told me. And I had 2 little girls. And so I researched everything you told me to prove that you were wrong, except I proved that you were right, and it was worse than you said, even. And now I was left with a dilemma because I had a really good job, and I had these 2 little girls, and I didn't want to change my life, but I had these 2 little girls. So I had to quit my job to bring my little girls home, to homeschool them. And I started my own business in my garage. And until I brought them home, I didn't realize how poisoned they were. I didn't know the things that they didn't know that they should have known because they didn't know to tell me. And I didn't know all of the underlying agenda because they were little. They didn't know to say something about it. They only knew what they had been told. And now it's 4 years later. And now I am making more money than I ever made when I worked before. I have my own business, and my little girls are home. My whole life changed for the better, all because I hated you. I said, no, it didn't change for the better because you hated me. It changed for the better because you stepped up to the plate. That's what we need to encourage parents to do. Don't complain to the school district that's hurting your child. Remove your child. They can't make you send your kid there. Take them out. And then move on from there.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to give a quick testimony about my experience with the Common Core with my daughter. She was in the public education system. I believe our school district rolled out the program 1 year in advance of New York State. We've always been a pilot school for Governor Cuomo and the Regents. We've been a pilot school since No Child Left Behind went through, and I have the original textbooks from back then, which are what we have now. My daughter would wet the bed. She was trained. She started wetting the bed. She would be fearful. She had panic attacks. She was 6 and 7. I finally was able to remove her. She's in a very good private school. I'm blessed enough to be able to afford that. She said to me last spring, "Mommy, if Common Core goes away, do I have to go back to my old school?" And she had a great teacher. She's a fabulous teacher, and I actually very much so respected her building principal as well. And I asked her, I said, "Do you want to go back if Common Core goes away?" And she says, "No, Mommy, I just love my new school so much. She says, I never want to go back." So what I am saying is your children and grandchildren are probably suffering much more and they don't understand it. My daughter just had the symptoms from the limbic system that Peg had spoken to you about. The other thing is I think parents are afraid. I've actually had people say, "We're afraid to say anything." Fear is not liberty, and you need to speak up for your children. If you do not feel you have support for whatever your personal reasons are, maybe you're a single parent, maybe you do have, both of the parents have to work and you don't feel you have the time, maybe you don't feel that you have the patience, form a co-op support group. You can find 3 or 4 other people that are like-minded to you. You can be a support group. Don't keep your kids in school because you have a fabulous football team. Don't let sports be the end-all. Well, we won't have access to that. There's access to many great extracurricular activities. Do not depend on your schools for that. Take them out. I cannot encourage it enough. Plus, there is an online program which is a fraction of the cost of private schools, and it's usafpe.com. It's USA Freedom Project Education, and it is taught by a teacher. It is online curriculum, and then there's just some assignments that you can do. I would very much so encourage each and every one of you to look into it because it's classical education, completely non-Common Core aligned. So you do not have to have the fear of that indoctrination either, and they are indoctrinating. The Boston Spa Central School District has the entire program. We have mental health clinics planted in our schools. They have outreach now to other psychiatric centers. They are in contract. They lied to me personally because I do a lot of the questioning. A lot of the parents are fearful. They don't want to be known by the school who they are. So I do a lot of it for them. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to do that for them. They told me that they get none of the information. And then when they had a spring kindergarten screening, the mental health clinic was sitting right outside at a separate table handing out questionnaires for the parents to fill out. Many of them complied, and that is the word I'm using. It's comply, because they don't understand. They don't realize what they are doing. And they're signing over their child's entire, and their families, because it's, psychologists and social workers. They're signing their entire mental health profile. over to the government. And we need to get the word out that these things are happening. Four Winds is in contract with our school district. Did you know that? Four Winds. And other psychiatric centers, because it's going to be a mandate. Right now, parents are just willingly signing everything over to the school. Don't do it. We also have the pathway, the United Nations pathway for the 2030 program. Our kids do not have an option on what to think in that program. They do not get English. They do not learn how to write. They do not read classical information of any kind. They watch movies on global warming and how terrible of a country we are. And they're being told that agriculture and organic, which organic is good. I'm very much so healthy-minded. But they're being told that we need the windmills for that, and that they need to learn how to drill wells so that they can go into third world countries. These are all very noble things, but what they're not telling them is that they're going to be bringing them into smaller communities, and that they're going to be living in stack and pack buildings, and that is taught in the program. So when I speak to that, because I've seen it firsthand, it's called new urbanism. So, they're not saying that we're taking property rights away from you. We're just going to stack and pack you, and it's healthier. Healthy is the key word that they're using as the bribe. Not to drive cars, but to take the electric government-run busing system, because they have CDTA and everyone else in the world coming in there, talking about all these wonderful things that they're going to have in these new urbanism cities. They can either walk or they can ride bikes. So what they're telling our children is they're going to be good little Chinamen. They're just putting little fancy bells on it, and they are not learning anything. The nanotech piece, my son went into it. I actually encouraged him to go into it, but then I watched, because I was hoping he would follow in his father's footsteps. His father is a architect for Global Foundries in Datacom. And my son is naturally adapt to that. He learned nothing about nano. He learned nothing about clean technologies. They're just indoctrinating our kids. That's all that they are doing. So having said that, I want you to be aware that they are not teaching our children the U.S. Constitution any longer. If they do, it's a drop in the bucket. And they are teaching the UN preamble and the articles of the UHDR starting in 5th grade. You need to take your kids out. Thank you.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
I just want to add one quick thing that we kind of touched on. My daughter lives in Colorado Springs. Her house is 1,000 more square feet than mine. I have a pretty decent house down in Clifton Park. My taxes are $6,300. Her taxes are $1,700. One of the things you want to be asking your school boards is, why is this so ridiculous? Why is this so ridiculous? Why is New York so bad? Because I said, yeah, but that school's not going to be that good out there. She said, no, Dad, it's a very good school. And I trust her opinion. She's in ministry with, she's worked through middle school, high school, and now she works with college-age kids. So she knows the kids and how they're growing. The school's good, and they can do it for $1,700 a year. So that might be one thing you could tell the lady with the 2 jobs. Pack your bags. I mean, New York is just oppressing us with these taxes, and we hear these stories all the time. People are just leaving. And it's got to end somewhere. Because we can only pay so many taxes and have so many freedoms taken away. Just tuck that away.
That's why my house is for sale.
I thought even though you send your children, even if you homeschool a private school, your child still has
That, yeah, that quarter's ours, that's theirs. This is ours.